And for more on what this means for Indian aviation, joining us now, Rajan Mehra, leading aviation expert and the Managing Director of Universal Aviation USA. He was also the head of Qatar Airways, Finnair and Asiana Airlines. Also with us, KC Singh, former Secretary at the External Affairs Ministry. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on India Business Hour. Rajan Mehra, let me start by asking you, how bad is this going to be as far as Indian carriers operating to the US are concerned, especially Air India?
It turns the clock back by several months, and it's more so regrettable because Indo-US aviation relations were at an all-time high. In the October Indo-US summit, it was attended by almost all the top government leaders of the US aviation, as well as from the Indian side, by the Secretary of Civil Aviation, by the DGCA, by the Airport Authority Director. So really, the timing is extremely bad. It makes sure that future projects like the Tata-SIA and other airlines that are planning to go to the US have to slow down and put on the back burner some of their plans. So it is extremely unfortunate. It will impact Air India, it will impact Jet Airways, and although Jet has an alliance with United Airlines already, it would be very interesting to see what happens next, because the FAA regulations certainly say that.
All right, Rajan, I'll come back to you on what could perhaps happen from here on. But Ambassador Singh, let me ask you, the Civil Aviation Minister says he's disappointed with the decision that the Ministry of Civil Aviation has actually been able to resolve 29 of the 31 concerns raised by the FAA in its last audit. The suggestion in that seems to be that perhaps if India and the US shared a better relationship today, we could have seen some slack being cut. Would you go with that?
Shireen, I think what's happened is that there are two aspects to it. One is that this inspection has been going on for some time. There are obviously some lapses. The minister has conceded there were 31 points, and they have met most of those conditions. Now, obviously, when safety elements come in, you can't say I met 80% of your concerns and the 20% can wait. So the argument could be made that we should have really met those deadlines. Now, last minute, we are running to create 75 posts. We didn't have enough inspectors and so on and so forth. But at the same time, US does tend to sometimes apply rules according to the exigencies of the situation. And we've seen that over the last 2-3 years, particularly post-2008, in fact, the Indian ambassador to US, Jaishankar, speaking just about 3 days ago, has articulated this, that post-2008, somehow the relationship has slipped from a geostrategic, broad position to where each side is looking at specific issues and then finding fault with the other. And then in that context, I think different stakeholders then don't look at the broad relationship, but pull the plug on whatever they want to at whatever point.
Right. Ambassador Singh, you know, the downgrade to Category 2 means that the FAA will or can, in fact, hike its surveillance. There will be other restrictions that will be imposed on carriers like Air India operating from India to the US. And that could, some would say, slow airline schedules as far as Air India and Jet are concerned. Ori, do you believe that they are going to turn up the heat even further, given what some would say is the precarious nature of our relationship today?
One is a problem of some other zones or areas following the FAA. Example, you don't want the Europeans to do that. There may also be commercial interests which kick in, which want to affect Indian civil aviation industry. I don't know. But I don't think we should really overstate the difficulties that we are not having difficulties with US. I think it's a question of rejigging of priorities. With each country has gone to whatever is their agenda. To give you one example, I think US has made a very big thing out of India being obstructionist in the WTO Doha round negotiations in Bali, where for us it was a very difficult problem because the UPA government had the Narega scheme, and with the election coming up, there is no way they could compromise on agricultural subsidies. Now for us, those were the red lines which are decided by domestic compulsions, but that is not how it is seen. So all that was really agreed upon is what is called a 4-year peace clause. But what I'm told is that the US TR went away sulking from there and very unhappy with what they thought was Indian obstructionism. Now there is this problem of individual entities within the two governments following their specific agendas without referring to the broad relationship which is at a very elevated level, and there is a serious geostrategic content to it. But that somehow got broken up into components.
Rajan Mehra, I want to pick up on that point because, you know, as some would say that this has been a matter that's been going back and forth for several years now. The Minister of Civil Aviation says that of the 31 issues raised, 29 have actually been resolved. So, in a sense, there is a question mark on the timing, and without imputing any motives to the FAA, would you question the timing?
I don't think so, Shireen. The main concern that the FAA has always had is the shortage of safety inspectors with the DGCA. And that has been their prime concern, and they've made it very clear to the Indian government. Now, in the last 5 years, the DGCA has not really been able to hire even a fraction of the required number. To be fair to the DGCA, they are restricted by the same way in which all government bodies are restricted. They have to go through the UPSC. They are not able to give the kind of salaries that that would be required for such technical expertise. So it's really been a cat and mouse game. The DGC has not been able to hire anywhere near the number of inspectors that they require. So I don't think the timing really has anything to do with the fact that, you know, the relations outside aviation between US and India are somewhat strained.
Right, Ambassador Singh, as I said, it would not be fair to question regulatory action, but, you know, the fear is that there seems to be an anti-India sentiment that is building up in the US. We've heard from pharma companies who are lobbying against India in Washington, for instance, saying that India is one of the worst in terms of IP records and regulation. Do you see more momentum building up as far as anti-India sentiment is concerned in Washington?
Unfortunately, when you're dealing with US, what happens is the business community there can be an asset. It was an asset for us from 2001 onwards. When the economy is up, the market is opening up, they are your allies. They were your allies during the civil nuclear deal. But the same component then becomes negative if they find they become impatient, they are not getting access. You got the civil nuclear liability law, which they thought was excessively strict. They thought that we haven't moved fast enough on FDI, etc., etc. It becomes then a transactional relationship. Unfortunately, the only way to change that is with political intervention. But I find that the US is focusing on West Asia, on Iran, on East Asia, on various other things, and the domestic agenda. We saw the State of the Union address of the US President just a few days ago, and there was no mention of India. India is just not on the US radar, but that doesn't mean that the relationship has got relegated to a very subsidiary position. That merely means that as of today, with a slowing economy, with an election coming up, I think US business is turning toxic in terms of approaching India.
Well, India no longer on the US radar. Ambassador Singh, Rajan Mehra, appreciate you joining us on India Business.